Bartlett. I am the Director of the Division of Environmental Assessment and Restoration in Tallahassee. And we are the division that essentially sets the TMDLs, works on the Basin Management Action Plans, and really works on restoration strategies in the state, and particularly for springs themselves. And it is certainly very much an unfortunate thing that we do have.
A little closer to the microphone, please.
Yeah, sure. It is very much an unfortunate thing that we do have contaminated springs. I think Jim hit it, Bob, you hit it. We have a lot of contamination in our springs. And it is nitrate contamination, which comes from human activity, and it's something we need to work on. I was 2 weekends ago down in McCullough Springs. Whenever you get visitors in Tallahassee, you take them to McCullough Springs. I mean, that's what you do, because it's an incredible place. You take the boat ride. And it was, you can see the effects of nitrate enrichment in McCullough Springs. You can see it in all of our springs. And it needs to be addressed. We have Clean Water Act statutory programs we implement. We have Florida statutory programs we implement. And man, you're right. These acronyms, they don't restore the springs, the acronym themselves. And so what the process is that we're given under state law and federal law is you set your water quality standards. You assess whether you have impairment against those water quality standards. You set your restoration goal, the % reduction that Bob referred to, which is ATMDL. I say restoration goal. And then you start your restoration plan. We have it, and it's not a federal provision. It really isn't a restoration plan federal provision. But in state law, we've been given what we call basin management action plans. And that's when the rubber hits the road. And that's really when you start to work on restoring these springs. Now that's a process that is in law, but that doesn't mean we should wait for the process to occur. Essentially we have identified all of our springs with the elevated nitrate conditions. We're out setting the restoration goals right now. We're working on the Basin Management Action Plans. But actually, that is a process that has the statutory teeth that help us move the ball down the road. But actually, you need change. That's what you need. And so, as we observe, right when we observe an impairment, that's when we start thinking about what can change. For example, the McCullough Springs Basin Management Action Plan is being worked on right now. But once we saw that it was impaired, that's when we started looking for sources, and that's when the wastewater treatment plant in Sprayfield was upgraded. We saw that opportunity that had to be taken. Very expensive, and it probably wouldn't have occurred without the stimulus dollars that issued as a result of the recession. So it's very expensive, and that's a lot of what it takes, is trying to figure out who has the money to help move this ball down the road. So let's talk about what we do. We have major sources that we need to address, and this is where you talk about how to change how we manage those sources. For example, fertilizer, whether it's agricultural or urban, needs to be addressed. And one of the things that we have done as part of the Sewanee and Santa Fe partnership is make a concerted investment in retrofitting irrigation and fertilizer practices on ag operations. This takes a serious investment, not only from the agricultural producer, but from also the federal and state governments to try to make sure that change occurs rapidly. And so there are folks out feet in the ground trying to knock on doors and talk with all these ag producers to reduce their pumping and reduce their fertilization. It's a state level requirement that all ag producers in these Basin Management Action Plan watersheds implement best management practices. That does reduce fertilizer, it does reduce nitrates. We're trying to take the next step and do wholesale improvements on those practices to get even more reduction. So we did approach, I was approached, Dr. Shortell was approached to try to figure out how can we cobble together more than $1 million to try to move the ball down the road in those two basins. Will it fix the problem? That remains to be seen. I'm pretty sure it won't. So more is going to happen in these watersheds as we try to reduce this nitrate contamination. Another big source, as we learned in McCullough, is our sewage. We will generally collect sewage from households in a collection system and then land apply it after treatment. In the McCullough Spring Shed, that discharge was going to Lake Munson. That lake is impaired for nutrients, so it got removed from Lake Munson and moved to a spray field. And then it found its way to McCullough Springs. And so now they had to work on spraying less nitrates on that spray field. And that will make a difference. It just went online a few months ago. It just hasn't been realized in the spring yet. Another place, Silver Springs, we set the TMDL, but before we even set the TMDL for Silver Springs, we worked to fund collection from spray fields near the spring mouth, move it to advanced wastewater treatment and away from the spring shed. And so they're laying pipe. I don't know if they've started laying pipe yet, but they've got the design work done to try to hook up not only a big spray field near the spring boil, but also some package plants. So it's collecting that source of nitrate, putting a higher level of treatment on it, moving it away from the spring. Worked straight with the state park itself over there. They have septic tanks on their cabinets. So they're making a very concerted effort. They put the funding there. They're in design right now to hook all those cabinets up to central sewer. So those need to happen. What I call the highest hanging fruit are some of our springs have large subdivisions right near the spring boil that are all on septic tank. We're talking hundreds of homes, sometimes more than 1,000 in a subdivision. Hooking up homes to septic tanks is a high-hanging fruit. My mother has a septic tank. She doesn't live near a spring, but she has a septic tank near the coast. And they have run sewer line in front of her house, and so that she could hook up to central sewer, but it's going to cost her $10,000 to do it. Now, she is asking me, well, you know, you're in the state government, can you give me a grant to hook this up? And I had to be frank. It's like, you're not in a contaminated area. It's important to hook your septic tank up, but we have higher priority septic tanks that need to be hooked up. And so we are looking for those opportunities where we can partner with the local government to work in a neighborhood to hook them up to septic, but it's costly, and you're talking thousands of homes. It's challenging because it's going to be hard to get thousands of homes to agree to that connection fee. So you've got to address that, and thousands of homes, many of which are on fixed income, so agree to a bill. So you have to get through that. So that's where public education is very important in our challenging areas. So those are the kinds of solutions that we're looking for. We're certainly looking for the opportunities, working with local governments to see what opportunities there are to get at these sources. But that's what has to happen. We need to get these nitrates down in the springs. I figured that there might be questions for me, Bob, so I was just going to end with that and then respond to questions if there are.
First question, Bert.
I'm Bert Eno. I'm the president of Rainbow River Conservation. We have recently joined as a member of a 5-member coalition and hired Attorney John Thomas to represent us to address the fact that the TMDL and the BMAP process to clean up springs does not include an account of what flow is. The MFL process is held separate from the BMAP process, and it fails. I don't understand how you can separate the two. If you've got low flow, too much pumping of water out of a spring or the spring shed, you're going to have more residence time for the nitrates to settle and deplete the water body. Secondly, I'm interested in the fact that sewage is a problem, and for the Rainbow River, that certainly is a problem. we still got 200 homes along the west bank of the Rainbow River that are all on septic tank. And there was a bill that was passed last year, Senate Bill 1620, I think it was, Senator Dean, that required for counties that had first magnitude springs to have a springs or have a septic tank inspection and pump out program. However, it got watered down to the point where 3 out of 5 county commissioners could opt out of that program. And in Marion Springs, turned out that all 5 of the commissioners opted out of that program. We got to get serious about this.
Do you want to address the issue between flow and water quality, Drew?
Certainly. And it certainly stems out of being in 2 places in Florida statutes, one that governs how flow is decided and one that governs how water quality is decided. When we go through our TMDL setting phase, we do an analysis to see whether the nitrate conditions are responding to different flow regimes. And if they are, then we have to address that when we set the TMDL itself. I know the water management districts are also looking at MFLs and what MFLs are necessary. They certainly coordinate with us to figure out whether an MFL needs to be different concerning ecologic and water quality concerns. And so there is coordination. They have to be adopted separately just because of the fact of the nature of the statutes, which may not be satisfying, but certainly there's room for conversation with the legislature on marrying those 2 statutorily. But I can tell you that we recognize that there is a disconnect in the statutes, so that's why when we are setting our TMDLs, we coordinate closely with the districts and vice versa. So certainly there is a connection. There's no denying that. But still, we have to get to that nitrate concentration, which is a very important goal. You hit on septic tanks. So one of the things we have studied, there's research on septic tanks as to what they what comes out of the drain field, and there really is not much of a difference in nitrate coming out of the drain field between a failing septic tank and a well-functioning septic tank. It still puts out a lot of nitrates. And so our solution needs to actually go beyond inspection and pump out for septic tanks. It needs to go to central sewer hookup. It needs to go to adding more nutrient reduction technologies to septic tanks. Both very costly measures.
Drew's going to have to leave us today at noon, so I'd be glad to take a couple more questions for him. Todd?
If I can talk about. Question I have is regarding the permit of additional nutrient sources. So let's say in a basin where the TMDL is exceeded, understand the rationalization of the VMAP plan to work with existing facilities or existing agricultural activities to reduce the nitrate load. But what I'm curious about is the rationalization for permitting additional load in those basins where we know that that's going to go to a receiver that's already higher than the TMDL.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it is certainly one of the most challenging and vexing issues we face in a spring shed because spring sheds are so large and they have a lot of human activity within that spring shed. And the knowledge of what happens in plot A versus plot B and how that affects the spring itself is not exact. So as new sources may be coming in, there's only so many permitting mechanisms we have on governing human activity on private land. But certainly when they're seeking an environmental resource permit or something along those lines, we have to look for the environmental impacts of that activity. We evaluate and do what we can, but there certainly the legislature hasn't given the department complete authority over all human activity across the state. But we do try to seek the knowledge and make the appropriate decisions as we can.
Yes, sir, up here.
Yes, I'm Larry Hartman. I'm the president of the 2-4 organization from Citrus County. And we've been in existence for almost 25 years and working on some of these issues. We had the representative from Swiftwood, South Florida Water Management District, speak to us a few months ago, and we had asked him, what about these companies that come in over by I-75? There's one that hauls about 5 tanker loads of water a day to be bottled in Ocala. And then we have one over in Homosassa area, Christopher area. And then, of course, we have this man, this Canadian that's come in north of Ocala there, and he wants to pump more water than the city of Ocala for his farming operation. And the man that spoke with us from Swiftmud said that the statutes that are in existence today for permitted for water use are so vague that they don't have the authority to turn down these permits. And we see the saltwater intrusion going on in Cedar Key, and it's happening along the coast in Citrus County too, for the 7 rivers that run out of our county because of the lowered flows from the springs, the head springs. And I would just like to know, where do we start with our legislation to close up some of those loopholes and be more specific? Because if we don't, we're standing at a cliff, and once we go over that, I don't know if there's any return or not. And that's a deep concern to us, and we just want to know if there's someone we can start with, or someone to go to, or maybe we can meet with you and get a game plan together, and maybe Jim could address this too. But we need to do something seriously about this issue, because the whole coast is going to be gone before long. Saltwater intrusion, there's all kind of continuing domino effects that come from that. What can we do about this?
That is a very good question, and I would like to defer to water management districts, because a lot of the root of your question was about water usage. And certainly as the districts are looking at water usage in the form of MFLs and so forth, we coordinate on what is that protected minimum flow and level. But when it comes to permitting new uses, I'm going to have to let water management districts respond to that. They're on the agenda in a couple of spots.
Right, Eric will be up in a minute. If you can't answer that one. Is there one more question for Drew? You've already had one, Todd. Linda? Can you? I know she speaks softly, so we need to give her a big stick here.
Thank you. I'm Linda Bystrack, and I'm a member of the Lake County Water and Soil Conservation District Board of Supervisors. And our budget is being affected like everyone else's, and what we're about to lose is something that should be a model for the whole state. It's our mobile irrigation lab that goes around to all the farmers and the citrus and the nurseries, plant nurseries, and teaches them how to use drip irrigation and less fertilizer. And at the end of June, we're going to lose that lab. Funding has already been cut from the St. John's Water Management District, which funded 1/3 of it. The other third is federal, and the other third is state ag. Is there any way we could get this saved and get more of these labs around the state to help the farmers save more water and to use less fertilizer?
That's a great question, Linda. I'm a huge fan of the local irrigation labs, and I know that Rich probably will be able to address this after the break, but we do need to talk about how to keep that funding. It is a huge benefit to have.
You're not going to lose your lab.
We've got Rich Boudel on the agenda in a minute, talking to the Office of Agriculture and Water Policy. So will you address that when you get out, Rich?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, well, Drew, I think we can let you go. Thank you very much.